Hey guys, today we're going to talk about the 4 universal firearm safety rules. This is going to be a video for newer shooters, so if you're an experienced shooter, you might stick around just for some of the scenarios that we're going to talk about, but for the most part, this is just for new shooters talking about the rules. So as I talk about this, I'm going to do the 1, 2, 3, 4 so we know what we're talking about. And as I talk about the scenarios after I say the rules name, it's all going to pertain to whatever rule I mentioned at the beginning. So starting off, we're going to start with rule number 1. Rule number 1 is treat every firearm that you interact with as if it is loaded. This pertains to firearms that you've just taken out of your safe, firearms that you are handed by another person, or even just firearms that you find out in the wild. So I know that's going to be rare, but if you were like walking down the street and you found a firearm on the ground, you need to treat that as if it's a loaded weapon. There's also some other legal things regarding that, like treat it as if it's a crime scene because maybe that firearm was just used in a crime. So don't touch it, don't do anything, but because we're treating it as if it's a loaded weapon, make sure that people are aware of it and don't stand in front of the firearm's barrel. So try to clear a path in front of it. So call the authorities, have them deal with the firearm, but don't let people stand in front of it. Treat it as if it's loaded and unsafe. Okay, so talking about rule number 1, we're going to talk about 2 scenarios here that can, like, possible situations that you might find yourself in. The first one is going to be that you've got a firearm, you want your friend to look at it, they will hand it back to you, put it back in the safe. The second one's going to be you're at the range and how we're going to deal with this as a weapon that we are treating as loaded at all times. So first scenario, you just bought your gun, you're real happy with it, you have a friend that's into guns or wants to learn about the gun, and so you want to show them it. So you go to your safe, you pull your firearm out of the safe. Well, what happens? You've got this firearm. You need to check it now to make sure that you're handing your friend a safe and unloaded firearm. So you pulled it out of the safe, you rack the slide back, you visually and physically inspect the chamber, you drop the slide, and then you pull the trigger in a safe direction. Now, I do this in every video. I show the visual inspection, what it's going to look like, especially if you're a new shooter. You might not actually know this. It's going to look like that. You're going to see a round in the chamber. This is a snap cap. I'm going to pull this out again. Oops, dropped it on the ground. The snap cap is a plastic bullet with an aluminum frame and a plastic primer. And so it's inert. It can't be fired. There's nothing, this can't be shot out of a gun. But that's what it looks like. So when you're doing that check, you're looking for something inside the barrel in that chamber right there. And the physical inspection, you can feel the empty hole. And as long as the slide is locked back, you can stick your finger in there. It's fine. And once you feel that it's safe, you drop the slide, pull the trigger. So now you've got your safe firearm. You know it's safe because you just checked it. You're going to hand it to your friend with the barrel pointed in a safe direction. Because, again, even though we know it's unloaded, we're treating it as if it is. So we're handing it off to your buddy. Now your buddy's got it. They may know more than you about firearms, so they may just check on their own. But as soon as they get it, they're going to check the same way you checked prior to handing it to them because they've received a firearm from somebody else. If they don't know, you're going to show your friend how to lock the slide back with the slide stop and show them the proper procedure for checking an empty firearm. Okay, drop the slide, pull the trigger in a safe direction. Now that they've got it, they can look at it, they can check out your optic, they can, check out your cool thumb rest. Oh, what a nice new gun you got, blah, 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 blah. Always point it in a safe direction because even though you just checked and they just checked, we're treating it as if it's loaded, okay? So that's all good. They've got a dead trigger. They can pull the trigger. They're done looking at it. They're going to hand it back to you. Well, guess what? You just received a firearm from a person that had control of the firearm. You don't know what they did with it. Even if you were watching them the entire time, they could have done some tricky sleight of hand and put a round in the chamber. So guess what? We're checking. Visually, physically inspecting the chamber, dropping the slide, pulling in a safe direction. You've regained control of your unloaded firearm and still treating it as a loaded firearm. You're going to put it back in your safe or in your holster or whatever you're going to do with it. But again, we're not pointing it at anybody. We're still treating it like that. Okay, so scenario number 2. you're at the range. This is going to be kind of the same deal. You just bought a new firearm. You want to go shoot it. So you're at the range. We're always going to point it in a safe direction. So this is downrange this way, okay? This is going to be to the left and the right of you. You might be at a range where other people are shooting with you. So what we're not going to do is we're not going to point it to the left because, again, it's always loaded. And we're not going to point it to the right, always loaded. And the thing that we're absolutely not going to do is point it at ourselves. And you will notice that I didn't point it at myself at all, even in this video, even to show you what not to do, because I'm treating it as if it's loaded. These two directions in my own kind of recording area I know are safe, so I can point in those directions to show. Okay, so if you are at a range, another thing that you're going to do is anytime you are pointing it downrange and you're not shooting, you're going to rack the slide back, leave the slide open, nothing in the magazine. And if you have a loaded magazine, you're going to put it on the opposite side of the firearm than the magazine will, because you don't want this getting stuck in there somehow. Okay, so we have that. We're going to be pointed in a safe direction, always downrange. Here's the thing that I see people do often, okay? So you're new to shooting, you just bought your firearm, you've fired maybe 10 rounds through it, okay? And the thing that happens a lot with shooters that are very new, with new firearms, let's see if I can get this going. There we go. Is they'll shoot off 6 or 7 rounds, and suddenly they go to pull the trigger again, and nothing happens. And it's because you have a stovepipe. It's a failure, malfunction of the gun where the extractor tries to extract the casing, and the casing gets stuck in between the slide and the chamber. And so a lot of new shooters, they'll pull that trigger, no bullet comes out of the gun, and they go, oh, what just happened? And they go to look at it. You see what I just did there? I just turned the firearm to the left. What did I just say? Treating it always as if it's loaded. We're not ever going to point it to the left because there might be people over there. Okay? And since we're treating it as if it's loaded, even though the bullet didn't come out of the gun and this got stuck, what happens if I pull this? Watch the slide. The slide just slammed forward. And so what happened is the extractor extracted the casing, and then the slide slammed forward and tried to chamber the new round. And as I pulled the casing out, the round probably got chambered. So if I turn the gun this way and I pull the casing out, there could be a chambered round in here, and now the round for sure is loaded and the trigger is primed and ready to go, right? So that could produce a negligent discharge that shoots to the left, right? Even if it doesn't, we're going to treat it as if it is loaded. So we're never going to point it that way, even under a malfunctions situation. So if you don't know how to deal with your malfunctions and you find yourself in that situation where you have a stovepipe, call over a range safety officer or somebody who knows what they're doing and have them help you fix it, okay? That's rule number 1. 2 scenarios for rule number 1. Now we're going to talk about rule number 2. Rule number 2 is probably the most important rule, and if you just remember this one will help you with most of your safety issues. I do not recommend shooting without knowing all 4, okay? So here's rule number 2. Never point the firearm at something that you are not willing to destroy, okay? Other people will say this is don't point this firearm at people or yourself. They'll say never point it at anything other than your target downrange, but I like that term of don't point it at something you're not willing to destroy, because it puts that image in your head of what you are actually doing when you point a firearm at something. Anything in front of a firearm at any time should be viewed as something that could be destroyed. So let's say I've got this glue bottle here in my little shop, and I place it in front of my firearm. It's not something I want to destroy, but it's something that I'm willing to destroy. If a round came out of my gun right now and destroyed this glue bottle, I'd be out a couple dollars. I could replace it. It wouldn't be the end of the world, so that's fine. I know everything in this direction is safe. I know everything in that direction is safe, and I know everything in that direction is safe. There's nothing around here nothing valuable, nothing alive, and everything that I could potentially shoot could stop a bullet at this point. So the bullet's not going to travel and hit something that I'm not aware of either, which we will talk about specifically at Rule 4. So don't point this at something you're not willing to destroy. And that includes people for moral reasons and legal reasons. That includes animals, pets, unless you're hunting. But just only things that you are intending or are willing to sacrifice, okay? So that's rule number 2. We're going to talk about rule number 3. Rule number 3 is keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to pull the trigger, okay? So you've seen me pull the trigger a few times in this video, and that's because I'm pointing at something that I am willing to destroy. I've checked to make sure there's not a round in there, but I am pointing it in a safe direction, and there's nothing there that I'm worried about destroying. So here's the scenario. I'm going to prime the trigger by racking the slide back. There's nothing in the firearm, and we've got this pointed down range. We've got our grip, and I have a video on proper grip etiquette so that you can get accurate shots. If you'd like to go watch that and you're a new shooter, you can watch that afterwards. But I've got my red dot and I'm aiming at my target, okay? This works with iron sights too. So if you have your 2 back iron sights, you're aligned with your front post and you've got it aimed at your target. Once you have your target acquired with your sighting system, you're going to put your finger on your trigger. So you'll notice that until then, my finger is above the trigger well, not hovering over it, above it, on the frame. And this finger, even though it's on the trigger well, can't actually reach the trigger and cannot pull the trigger. So you've got your proper grip, you've got your target acquired, you're ready to pull the trigger. You're going to take your finger off the frame, into the trigger well, start squeezing the trigger until you find the wall. And once you're at the wall, you're going to make sure, oh, I still have my target acquired, pull the trigger, okay? So if we do that, if we don't have our finger on the trigger until we're ready to fire or pull the trigger, we won't have what's called a negligent discharge. So I'm going to use this snap cap again to show what's going on with a negligent discharge. Okay, this is a live round. It's a snap cap, but we're going to pretend in our minds that this is a live round. So I'm putting the snap cap in the chamber. I'm going to drop the slide on the snap cap. And now there's a bullet snap cap in the chamber, okay? If I have my finger on the trigger and I bump myself, right, I can accidentally pull the trigger, and that's a negligent discharge. So if I am aiming this downrange and I've got my finger on the trigger, even if I'm not aiming at my target, I'm just kind of trying to find the target, I can accidentally squeeze the trigger, or I can get bumped into from behind or something, which would cause me to pull the trigger. And that'll send a round out, and I'm not aiming at something that I intend to destroy. Even though it's pointed downrange, that could be a big problem. Another thing is you could just be looking at your firearm, forget, and put your finger in the trigger well, and now you're not even aiming downrange. You're aiming somewhere where you don't want to be. So 2 rules combined, you're kind of protecting, you know, the other rules. So if you happened to make a mistake on one, because you're following the others, you're protecting all of them. So follow all the rules all the time, but each rule will sort of help the other ones. Okay, so that's rule number 3. Finger off the trigger until ready to fire. The other time you can you can put your finger on the trigger is not necessarily when you're ready to fire, but when you have visually and physically inspected that the chamber is empty. Then you drop the slide, point in a safe direction, pull the trigger. But again, it's off the trigger until you're ready to pull. I wouldn't put my finger on the trigger if this was an unsafe direction, because I wouldn't want to accidentally pull the trigger in an unsafe direction, even if I know it's unloaded. So every time I do that, I'm pointing this way to represent that I have pointed it in a safe direction, okay? That's rule number 3. We're going to talk about rule number 4. Rule number 4 is never shoot at something that you don't know what's behind it, okay? So I'm going to point this like this here, and we're going to use a piece of wire. Actually, we'll use this sticker sheet to represent our target, and we're going to use this bottle here. So I've got this bottle that we've been using, and I've got this sticker sheet to represent our target that we're shooting at. And you will notice that my target is completely obscuring the bottle from this direction, okay? So I can't even see the bottle. If I'm shooting at this target, what's gonna happen? This is a thin piece of paper. The bullet's gonna go right through it and it's gonna hit whatever's behind it, this bottle, okay? So if this was a valuable bottle that I didn't wanna lose, or a person or an animal, suddenly you've got a big problem because you didn't know what was behind your paper target. This doesn't just include paper targets, this includes everything. So walls in your house, you don't want to shoot at a home intruder and know that they're behind a wall that is like your family is behind that wall, right? You don't want to shoot at drywall. Drywall's not going to stop a bullet. So never shoot at something that you don't know what's behind, okay? If you're at the range, this could be as simple as like a dog wanders onto the range and wanders behind your target. You wouldn't want to shoot the dog, so don't do that. But it's, you know, people, you never know if somebody's walked down range and they're behind the target, checking their target. It's just a various list of things that you need to make sure. So for one very specific reason we're going to talk about here, this is kind of the only rule that's impossible to follow all the time. And so one of the times that it's kind of impossible to follow is, say you've purchased this firearm for self-defense. Okay, so you now carry this firearm and somebody is an actual threat to you. They make these. These are hollow point bullets. They are cavitied in the front, and when they hit a soft or hard target, they flower out, so they split open and they become much bigger. And what this does is it slows down the bullet so that it stops in whatever it hits. It's not guaranteed, it's not going to happen every time, so it's not a catch-all, but in a situation where you can't afford to figure out what's behind your target because that target is a threat, having a hollow-pointed jacketed bullet will allow you to shoot at that threat and hope that the bullet stops in that threat rather than pass through and hit somebody who might be innocent behind the target. So I'm not a lawyer. I cannot give you good legal advice, but my advice to you is to make sure that if you had to take a shot to save lives, including your own, that you have something that isn't going to over-penetrate the target and hit something behind. So if you do carry, go talk to a firearms lawyer, talk to them, get actual advice from a lawyer, not myself, and figure out what's best for you in that situation. I'm just giving you the information to tell you that this firearms rule is one of the only ones that's very difficult to adhere to in certain situations. All the other three hold true the entire time. You're not going to put your finger on the trigger. You're not going to aim it at something you don't wish to destroy. You're going to assume that the firearm is loaded. So those are the 4 rules. Those are the situations and scenarios we've talked about. If you have any questions that I haven't answered, drop a comment and I will try to answer them. Again, if it's a legal question, I can try to help you find that information, but again, I'm not a lawyer. So thanks for watching, guys.